What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, I want to talk about the most asked question, not only on my YouTube channel, but in the entire crypto space in general. And that question is the bottom in for Bitcoin? Now, I know this is a highly debated subject, but it's a hotter question than ever. With this big move up that we've gotten, we have been coming down in this bear market in an absolute brutal manner with almost no relief whatsoever until recently, where we have seen this big move to the upside. So I think there is no better time to make this video than now. And as you guys know, there are some people out there saying that we have much lower to go and the bottom is nowhere near being in. We have people with price targets as low as $3,000. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who have been saying the bottom is in for Bitcoin. Every time we get a drop in the bear market, they're calling for the bottom being in, and then we just come lower. And then you have those people who are calling for new all-time highs next week. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have people who have been saying the bottom is in for a while and there is no more pain to be had in this bear market, and we are ready to go into the next bull market. And then you have me, the data-driven guy who just wants to look at the charts and take the information given to come to an educated conclusion, even though we know that we can't lean 100% one way or the other. So guys, in this video, we're just going to be checking in on Bitcoin from more of a macro perspective. We do a lot of day trading, scalp trading, and short-term stuff on this channel, but I do want to take a little bit of a step back and take a look at some things such as the CBBI or the Bitcoin Bull Run Index, which has been an extremely useful tool throughout this bear market to try to judge the sentiment of the market. And then I also want to go ahead and take a look at those higher time frames and some signals that may be popping up on the chart that could indicate that the bottom is likely in, or at least that's what these signals were pointing to in the past. And then I want to bring up my Bitcoin cycle chart, which is basically a chart that I made that marks off the tops and the bottoms of the Bitcoin bull runs and bear markets, as well as the time between certain tops and certain bottoms. Where are the halvings? So I basically just made a chart marking out all that stuff on the weekly time frame, so we could kind of get a good idea of the context of where we are in the actual 4-year cycle. So hopefully, by the end of this video, we're going to take a look at the bullish case and the bearish case, kind of weigh the evidence against each other, and then come to a conclusion, or at least as close as we can get to a conclusion, to see if the bottom is in for this crazy thing they call Bitcoin. But before we get into it, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of these awesome pre-recorded videos or urgent market updates that we upload to the channel. So, guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the charts. I want to start off by just looking at the price action and some specific things that have been happening that could be indicating that the bottom is in. We're going to be taking a look at some key levels, and then we're going to move into the CBBI or the Bitcoin Bull Run Index, and then we'll go ahead and hop on over to the cycle chart to see if there's anything that was happening in the previous cycles that may be presenting itself again in the current price action that could be indicating that the bottom is in. Let's get into it. So guys, here we are on the Bitcoin weekly chart. Now, if you remember back in the day, I don't remember exactly where we were, but before we got into this massive, horrific bear market, we had actually made a video trying to predict what the bottom might look like when it did come in. And one of those things that we looked at was a potential bullish divergence forming on the weekly time frame. And you can see we have actually put in a weekly bull div right here. Now, when we made that video trying to figure out what the bottom for Bitcoin might look like, I was saying that it might start to form at around $14,000. That was kind of the key level that we were looking to put that bull div into. Obviously, that prediction was very speculative. There's really no way to guess exactly where that bull div would happen, but we were just having fun and speculating, and turns out we actually got something like almost exactly what we were looking for. We actually, instead of putting that bull div in at 14K, or maybe 14.5 was the level we were looking at, we actually wound up putting it in at about 15.5. So the thought was right, but the price was just slightly off. But essentially, guys, we did put in this weekly bullish divergence, and when you do this on such a high time frame like the weekly, this could be very well the mark of the bottom of this bear market. Now, just in general, I do want to point out that I do think as of right now, there is a better chance that the bottom is in than not. But I want to be very clear. That does not mean that we will not come lower and make new lows. When it comes to any financial asset, you have to understand that nothing is in your control and there is no way to 100% predict something. But as of right now, with the information that we are given, it does look like the bottom was likely put in November. at about $15,000, right? Or about $15,500, depending on what exchange you're looking at. It does look like it's more likely that the bottom is in, at least at this point. And as we go through this video, the bullish puzzle pieces will start to stack up pretty quickly. But again, I don't want to say that, the bottom is 100% in. There's no way for me to know that. And if there's anybody out there telling you that the bottom is 100% in and there is zero chance of coming lower, please run from them as fast as you can. But what happened here, guys? We actually wound up putting that weekly bull div in, and that wound up being where we put the current lows in for this bear market. And there really would be no better way to put in a low for a bear market, in my opinion, than a weekly bullish divergence. So bullish puzzle piece number one is we got the bull div on the weekly. We didn't come down as low as we expected. We missed it by $1,000, but we did get that weekly bull div. And if this move up does continue, it will become more and more likely that the actual bottom is in for Bitcoin, and we may never see that $15,000 Bitcoin ever again. Now, another thing to take a look at here, guys, when looking at Market Cipher B, which is one of the indicators that I use in my analysis every single day, something that we were looking at here, guys, was the money flow on the weekly time frame. And by just looking at the money flow, guys, you can kind of see here that last time, this was back in 2014 when we came into the red. I'll call it right here. If you measure that out, the money flow was in the red on the weekly for about 371 days. And then if you come down to the 2018 bear market right here, you can see that we can measure that money flow right here. We were in the red for about 259 days before creeping back into the green for just a second. But we did during that March 2020 dump right here. I think we all know what happened at that time. But once that black swan event did happen, we got a big move down back to the lows of that bear market. But it did pull us back into the red with that money flow again. And if we pull it from the beginning of when we came into the red all the way, ignoring this little blip into the green, and we come right to the end, you could see that we were in the red for about 427 days. So if we extrapolate that theory all the way to our current price action, you can see here, ever since we came into the red, you can see that we've been in the red for 336 days straight. Now, there is no guarantee that this money flow is going to play out exactly like this money flow, but with the number coming in very close to the amount of days we were in the red in these past bear markets, it may seem likely that we're going to start to see the money flow cross into the green sometime soon, because comparing it to the previous bear markets, enough time has gone by, at least while looking at the money flow, to come back in here and cross into the green. If we wound up coming up in the next few weeks or next couple of months to cross into the green on the weekly, it will wind up being very, very similar to these previous bear markets. So weekly bull div and weekly money flow seem to be pointing in the direction that the bottom is already in. And if we zoom in on this money flow, guys, you can see we are starting to curve up here. So we are definitely headed in the right direction. Now, the last thing I want to show you guys on the actual price action is over on the monthly time frame. And the thing I want to show you here is that monthly green dot. Now, in the past, guys, when we get these monthly green dots, every single other bear market we've had, all the way back to 2015, you can see that once this green dot printed on the monthly, although it didn't mean that the pain was over, it did mark that the bottom was back here in January of 2015. So as soon as once that monthly green dot printed, it did turn out that the bottom was already in, even though we wound up coming down a bit again before actually coming up in the next bull run. And then you come over to 2018, you can see we got that monthly green dot, and at that point, the bottom was already in back here in December. So every other time we got a monthly green dot, the bottom was already in, and we have printed and confirmed our monthly green dot. And you can see money flow is starting to come back up here, so that is an interesting sign as well, and technically would be a point for the bulls. So that basically wraps up the things on these higher time frames that I've been looking at that could be indicating that the bottom is in. Now let's go ahead and check in on the CBBI, or the Bitcoin Bull Run Index. So guys, the Bitcoin Bull Run Index's confidence score is at a 19. So if you guys don't know about the Bitcoin Bull Run Index, definitely check out the videos we have on the channel. This is a tool that I've been using throughout this entire bear market, and it has been very, very insightful. So basically what the CBBI does is it takes a bunch of different metrics here. You can see you have the Pi Cycle Top Indicator, you have the Rupal New Pool chart, you have the R-HODL ratio, you have a ton of really good metrics here, the MVRV score, amongst other things, guys, a ton of really good metrics here. And they take all this information that gives you this chart, as well as a number readout here, and basically the way you read this is the closer to 100 you are, the closer you are to the top of the market, and the closer to 0 you get would be the closer to the bottom you're getting. Now, if we come in here and check on this, guys, you could see that in the past, we have had the actual bear markets bottom out at a 1 back in 2015, and we had this bear market bottom out at about a 2 in December of 2018, and now we are back in our current bear market here, where the bottom of the CBBI had read 2. So if we pulled a 2 on the CBBI in the previous bear market, that marked the bottom for Bitcoin in 2018, and now we have gotten a 2 once again. So when looking at the CBBI, it would definitely be plausible to think that the bottom was actually in November when we came down to that $15,000-ish level. You can think of it as like being a 2% chance that we're at the top of the market, or, you know, like a 98% chance that we're at the bottom. So I would definitely say, at least at this point, that the CBBI is definitely indicating that the bottom is more likely in than not. So there's a pretty big list of bullish evidence here indicating that the bottom may be in for Bitcoin. Not only do we have the weekly bullish divergence, which was already something we were looking at for a potential bottom, but we also have the weekly money flow looking like it wants to recover. And then also having the CBBI read out at a 2 in November could have very well marked the bottom for Bitcoin. So now let's go ahead and jump over to my cycle chart, where we could take a look at all the previous cycles and see if there's anything from a timing perspective that may be adding up to the bottom being in. So here we are, guys, on my cycle chart. Now, obviously, again, all I really did here was mark out not only the all-time highs, but also the bottoms for each cycle. And then I kind of measured the distance between certain things. So here we have a measurement from the top to the bottom, from the top of the bull market to the bottom of the bear market, which was 413 days. And I did the same thing on all these cycles. So, you know, just marked out some pretty important stuff. So let's take a look at some of this information and see if it can help us come to a conclusion of whether the bottom is either likely in or not. So, guys, something I want to take a look at here is going to be that 200-week moving average. And the reason I want to look at this is because in the past, you could see we have bottomed out essentially on this 200-week moving average. Now, obviously, this bottom did come in all the way over here. However, there was no 200-day moving average over there, so we wouldn't know if it was hitting. And the only reason there was no moving average down there is because there is not enough candles here to calculate the moving average. But you can see as we took this next little dip down, as we, you know, obviously the bottom came in, we came up a little bit. But once we came back down, we did bottom out on that 200-week moving average. And then in the 2018 bear market, you could see we bottomed out exactly right at that 200-week moving average. And then we came up, and then the March 2020 Black Swan event brought us right back down to that 200-week moving average. We closed right on top of it, and then we came up, the halving happened, and that's where we got our massive bull run. Now, if we come up to our current price action, guys, we had actually broken this 200-week moving average, bearishly retested it, and then got another move down to put in our bullish divergence before coming up. And now, over the past few weeks, guys, we have consistently been knocking on the door to this 200-week moving average to potentially break out and above it. Now, if we are able to break that 200-week moving average, this would be an extremely bullish signal, in my opinion. If we could get above there, this is kind of where, if we can hold support on top of that level, this is where I would start to expect that the bottom is like almost certainly in. But we are currently testing that level right now, so we'll have to let you know, price develop over time to see if we're going to get just another bearish rejection. Are we going to come up here and get yet another rejection off that 200-week and then come down to put in some lower lows? As you can see, we have some lower targets down here between about 12 and 14K. Are we going to get that rejection and all the bears are, you know, jumping for joy? They finally got their lower lows. Or are we going to hop up on top of this 200-week moving average and hold it as support and wind up coming up to some higher prices, and then all the bears are going to be pulling their hair out? Oh my God, I guess the bottom is in, and now they're stuck buying up here at 50K. And one thing I do want to point out, guys, is, you know, one of the reasons why I do think it may be more likely on top of all those other bullish signals and bullish puzzle pieces, another thing that makes me think that it may be more likely that the bottom is in is because you'll remember in the bull run, everyone was calling for 100K. But the thing to realize here is when you have people screaming and and you have most people screaming for a certain price level, a lot of times price will not get there, right? And essentially what that is greed, right? We went from, all the way down here in March 2020, at about $3,000 or the bottom of the bear market. We went all the way down from about $3,000 all the way up to, 50K, 60K, and that wasn't enough, right? 69K, right? That wasn't enough for people. They wanted the 100K, and they never got it. And basically what that is greed. And I see this mess people up constantly, and this is something I had to learn and grow from. Just like people were greedy going for that 100K, a lot of people got wrecked thinking like that. And in the same way, greed is coming in. All the bears screaming for lower lows, saying that the lower lows need to come in. Listen, it very well could happen, right? We could easily get a black swan and it could rip us all the way back down to some lower lows. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is somewhat greedy, right? Because the bears are not going to realize that the bottom is in before it's too late and they're buying really expensive Bitcoin, right? Again, when you have all these people screaming for lower lows, lower lows, lower lows, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get that, right? If that makes sense. Typically, the herd is wrong. So just keep that in mind. But, very well, we could reject that 200-week moving average and come down. I don't want... the point of this video is for it to be an objective video. I am not saying that the bottom is 100% in or 100% not in, but I just want to present the evidence and let you guys come to your own conclusions yourself. So that is one thing to note on the cycle chart, guys, is that we are approaching that 200-week moving average. And some other really, really interesting things here, guys, is going to be some of the timing, right? If we measure from our second top here back in November of 2021, and we measure all the way to what may be the bottom right now that came in almost exactly a year later, you could see that we have been in this bear market from the top to the bottom for about 364 days. Now, obviously, you guys know I am a big believer that this first top was our actual top, and this was some kind of weird inflated dead cat bounce. But this is the higher price, so I'm going to measure from there. We have about 364 days from that top to the bottom, if that is the bottom. And if we go ahead and measure that on other cycles, such as this 2018 bear market, you can see, weirdly enough, guys, 364 days from that all-time high to the bottom was the amount of time that it took to find the bottom of the market, right? Doesn't get much closer than that. It's the exact same amount of days. And if we come over to that 2014 bear market, you could see the cycle bottom did come in 413 days after the all-time high. So you could argue that enough time has gone by for this bear market to completely play out and bottom out if you're comparing it to the previous cycles, right? So I also do want to make sure that I'm clear, guys. Looking back at history can only give you so much of an insight into what is going to happen in the future. Just because this has happened in the past does not mean that it's going to play out like that this time. But you can see, although history did not repeat itself exactly in this bear market as it did in this bear market, it came pretty dang close, right? 413 days from the top to the bottom, 364 days from the top to the bottom. So very, very interesting timing-wise, some of this stuff, how it lines up, right? And then you guys can also see, if we go ahead and measure the distance from the halving to the bottom of the market, that did take about 903 days, assuming that our bottom did come in here in November. And if we come back to these other cycles, you can see that the cycle bottom came 882 days after the halving in the 2017-2018 cycle. You can see here in 2013-2014, it took 777 days to go from the halving to the bottom. And in this current cycle, if we have actually bottomed out already, it will have been about 903 days. Pretty close timing, right? It's never going to match up 100%, but the fact that some of this timing is so dead on, it is a very, very interesting thing to look at. So from a timing / cycle perspective, this would also point to the bottom more likely being in than not. Now, I know this video is starting to look like, kind of seems like Frankie Candles is making this video to tell us the bottom is in. Now, that is not what I'm trying to do here, guys. So let's real quick just cover some of the bearish things because it's not all sunshines and rainbows. Again, I do want to say there is 100% a possibility that the bottom is not in. The whole point of this video is to be objective. I'm not saying the bottom is definitely in. I'm here just to show you the bullish and bearish puzzle pieces and, again, have you come up with your own conclusion. Now, one major bearish puzzle piece on the charts right now, guys, is the monthly. Now, I know we look looked at the monthly green dot, saying that was a bullish puzzle piece. Money flow coming back up, that's pretty bullish as well. But one thing to realize here is money flow is generally coming to the downside, guys, and we don't have enough information here. We've never been in the red with the money flow on the monthly, so there really is no telling if this crosses over into the red what we will likely wind up seeing. Are we just going to dip into the red, come right back into the green, or is this going to be like the start of some big collapse that we've never seen before? It's really hard to tell. But this would generally just be a bearish sign because money flow is definitely coming out on that monthly time frame. Also, money flow is crossing over into the red on the 2-week, which would also be a pretty bearish sign. However, if we back test this and look at the 2018 bear market, you could see the bottom came in back here in December, and money flow continued to basically come out over time, and then it wound up actually coming back into the red during that Black Swan event that we all know what happened. I don't want to say it on YouTube, but even though the money flow came into the red on the 2-week, the bottom was still already in. So even if this money flow comes deeper into the red, I don't know if that means that we are definitely going to make a lower low. And the biggest bearish puzzle piece, guys, is it's going to be just the macro sentiment of the world, I want to say. We have a lot of crazy things going on geopolitically. We have a lot of things going on. We have banks going under. We're in a recession, right? All the headlines in the news is recession just starting. It's going to get worse. Banks are collapsing. This is the start of the end. There's some geopolitical craziness that might happen. I don't want to say that on YouTube either. So there are some really, really bearish things in the macro that could easily bring us to the downside. And if you're catching my drift about this geopolitical thing, if there is some kind of big announcement that something big is going to be going down, this could easily flash crash us down to lower lows, in which case I will be buying that dip. And last but definitely not least, guys, is going to be for our last bearish puzzle piece, guys. I do want to bring up that death cross that we just got on the weekly. So we have actually never gotten a golden cross or a death cross on the weekly time frame, but you can see right here, we did just get that death cross, which is pretty funny because it wound up giving us a little bit of a dump and then a massive rip to the upside. So is this thing going to wind up being very, very bearish? Typically, death crosses, although don't always indicate instant dumps, are typically bearish. That's why they're called death crosses, and they do usually play out. We've never seen one on the weekly time frame, so we have nothing to base this off of, but this would definitely be a very, very bearish puzzle piece, and if this is going to play out like any other death cross we see on other time frames, this could easily bring us to lower lows. But then again, we also did get the daily golden cross, which is typically a big, big bullish signal, so that does add a little bit of confusion there, but I would definitely add this to the bearish list, and that is that death cross on the weekly time frame. So guys, I think that's all the time I got for today's video. Now, obviously, there is no way for us to know if the bottom is 100% in. There is no way to know if this macroeconomic environment is going to get better or worse. The only thing we can do is wait for the news and the information to get to us and then make decisions based off of that. So I can't say if the bottom is definitely in or not, guys, but just by looking at the evidence, I will say, as of right now, there is definitely more evidence from a technical standpoint that the bottom is likely in for Bitcoin. And again, I'm not saying that because I'm a moon boy and I want to go to 100K and, I want Bitcoin to be bottomed out, so I'm saying the bottom's in. That is not what's happening here. This is just looking at the charts. You got the weekly bull div. From a timing perspective, looking at that cycle chart, enough time has definitely gone by to at least have a whole bear market play out. The CBBI wound up reading a 2, which is called the bottom in the past. And we have the weekly money flow starting to work its way to the upside. So again, you basically have all that bullish stuff we just looked at against a bearish macroeconomic environment, some crazy geopolitical stuff that's going on, and monthly money flow, which are not to be ignored, guys. These things can definitely bring us lower, but again, at this point, there is definitely more evidence suggesting that the bottom is likely in for Bitcoin rather than lower lows incoming. But let me know in the comments down below, do you guys think the bottom's in for Bitcoin, or do you think we're going to 3K? So guys, I think that's all the time I got for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Frankie Candles.
Here we go, at the top of the class on a roll. And it's time to run it up, yeah, maxed out, put the pedal to the floor. Ayy, on the road, here we go. Yeah, we winning by a landslide. Never see me coming on my landmine. Yeah, I ain't taking orders in command.